Well, good morning to you all, good morning. What is it today? Friday, Vendredi. Vendredi le 31 July 2020. For those of you that take notice of these things, it is the day that many people around the world will remember Saint Ignatius Loyola. I don't really know much about St Ignatius. You know, in my childhood, he wasn't someone we spoke about much. But he was the chap who wrote that prayer. Teach me, good Lord, to serve thee as thou deservest. To give and not to count the cost. To fight and not to heed the wounds. To labour and seek no reward save that of knowing that we do thy will. Now, it's sort of appropriate that we should start what I'm about to do with thinking about St Ignatius, because the chap that I wanted to talk about today, I promised the other day that I would tell you all about the man who taught me to drink tea. A chap called John Davey. John was, well, he was a wonderful man. Famously, he was a Roman Catholic. I say famously, it was famous amongst those of us that knew him. Yeah. Now, I need to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about me. Funny how when we talk about other people, we always seem to end up talking about me. I'm one of those irritating people who passes exams. I don't know anything, but I can normally sit down at an exam and get enough of the answers sufficiently correct that a lot of people have fallen into thinking that I'm clever. Yeah. It's been a blessing, it's been a curse. When I left school, I had various bits of paper that I've still got them somewhere, Lord knows where, that I can show to people and say, look how jolly clever I am. Well, of course, they don't. They simply say that I passed exams. But the relevance here is that they got me a fairly good job. Pay wasn't all that, but the pension was rather wonderful, and I got to work with some very wonderful people. One of whom was John Davey. John was, to me, he was at the time an ancient man. It's funny, isn't it, how we change in life. When we was young, we would look at people who were 35 and think, goodness, they're old. And we'd look at people who were 55 and we'd think, goodness, you know, he should be in a rest home. Now, I'm not quite sure how old John was, but he was one of that generation. I guess he was older than my father. He was one of that generation whose childhood and adolescence was interrupted by the activities of Messrs. Hitler, Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt, mustn't forget Roosevelt, and a certain amount of unpleasantness that involved killing other people or being killed by other people, and warfare. Now, war is a terrible, terrible thing, and it does funny things to different people. And what it did to John was it took him from a loving home I know from all of the things that John told me how much he loved and respected his mother, and it thrust him into the Royal Navy. And he served in the Royal Navy with, in the grand scheme of things, with no particular distinction. You know, he didn't win the Victoria Cross, or he didn't come to too much notice, but he served in some very strange places. And after that particular set of nastiness stopped, he found himself working for the British government in various offices, and when I started work, there he was. Anyway, that was all good stuff, and he was a good colleague. Now, being the sort of chap that passes exams, everyone told me that I should take the exam for promotion. And another chap in our office took the exam, I took the exam, and embarrassingly I passed. The other chap passed very, very well and went on to become, I won't say important, we're not talking about running Great Britain or anything like that, but he went on to higher positions than I did, but I passed, and so they decided I needed to be promoted, which I really, with hindsight, I wasn't old enough to be promoted, but that's the nature of these things. And John went from being a colleague to one of my chaps, along with other people. A fella called Sam, my boss was a man called Dick, and everything was good. Well, one particular morning, Dick summons me to his office. It wasn't a serious, frightening sort of summons, it was just one of those, come and see me, I've got something I need you to deal with. Oh yeah, if I do all this rolling around on the ground, people will love me and they might give me food, and who knows. Anyway, Dick told me all about this job that he wanted me to do, and it seemed to me like a huge and terrifying task. And Dick explained the time scale that he wanted it done in, which to me was quite frightening. Anyway, I went back to my office and I explained to John and to Sam that we'd been given this job to do, and it was terribly important, and it really needed to be done now, and we needed to stop what we were doing and organise our lives. And John said, let's have a cup of tea. Anyway, I was young and hot-headed and impetuous, and I'd been tasked with this incredibly important and urgent job. And I said, no, John, no, there's no time for that. We've got to get stuck in. Well, he didn't tell me off, because subordinates don't tell their bosses off, do they? And John was a good old boy. But he looked at me and he said, now listen, when I was in the Navy, on the Russian convoys, on destroyers, and the ship would be rolling 45 degrees either side of the vertical, and German aeroplanes would be trying to bomb us or torpedo us, and German submarines would be trying to sink us, the captain would turn round to me and he would say, Davey, make a cup of tea for everybody. Now, if you can drink tea on the bridge of a destroyer somewhere north, well, yeah, on the way to Murmansk in Russia, with German aeroplanes trying to bomb you and German submarines trying to sink you, and you can stop and make and drink tea, then really there's nothing that is that important that you can't take a few moments. Well, I realised that I wasn't going to change John and Sam in an instant, and I sort of huffed and puffed a bit, and they got on and they made the tea. Incidentally, John was one of those chaps who warmed the pot and he warmed the mugs and he mashed the tea, and he did a thorough job on it. But while he was making the tea, he and Sam sort of gently interrogated me and said, "Okay, so what is it that Dick wants us to do?" So I told him all about it, and John looked at Sam and said, "Well, that's the same as we did a couple of years ago, isn't it?" Anyway, they assured me that it was no great problem. They knew how to do what was needed. They got on, they did it quickly and efficiently, and I was able to go back to my boss and say the job is done. Because drinking that tea gave us time to stop and think. So there we are. That was the man who taught me to drink tea, no matter what was going on.